Hey guys, today I'll be walking you through this painting of some plums that I did. On the right side of the video, you'll see a 20-minute poster study that I did, as well as a photo of the setup so you get some idea of what I was seeing when I was painting this. What I liked about this setup was the colorful and varied highlights. I thought the surface texture would be an interesting challenge, and I liked the colors and the shadows as well. I start with a very basic drawing just to get the composition and spacing correct. And after I'm happy with how everything is laid out, I start by rendering the piece from left to right, working progressively so that I'm not jumping around. Over here, I'm painting in a pretty neutral cast shadow, but where the cast shadow was directly underneath the object, there is some pretty vibrant color. This area that's directly underneath the object in a cast shadow, it can also be referred to as the occlusion shadow. I think you should always search your shadows to find these interesting notes of color. When I was newer to painting, I would use pure white paint for highlights, but that's a fast way to get an inaccurate result. Highlights, more often than not, are very colorful. I thought the highlights in this setup had interesting shapes and a lot of color, so I tried to be very specific when I painted them. This highlight, for example, was very close to a yellow ochre. There is a secondary highlight next to it, which was the cool light from the window behind me. Later on, the light changed, and this is the only plum with the secondary highlight. I start blocking in the next plum here. I'm not too worried about the light and shadow side being connected yet, and I'll slowly start to integrate them as the colors and values get closer to what I see. In this early stage, I work much more broadly using larger brush strokes. I'm trying to render the core form and not worry about any surface texture. Once that core form is working, I can move on to the reflected lights and finally the surface texture. Some of the plums have blue marks on them, which offered a cool contrast to the warm local color. To make this highlight, I mix a very bright orange, then I heavily load the brush. Once the paint's down, I can run my brush over the edges to sculpt it into the correct shape. To finish off, I throw in some of the surface spots on this plum. I put these in thinly, lightly touching the canvas with a small brush. I'm using the same color that I did for the highlight, but much darker. I make some alterations to the shape a bit last minute here, and I'm getting ready to move on to the next plum. By contrast, this next plum was almost monochromatic. I used the same technique here. I laid down an impasto high value orange and softened the edges. I continue working left to right, finishing the plum and moving on to its cast shadow. I find the same blue note in the occlusion shadow. And I changed the shape again last minute. I've always thought of oil as a forgiving medium, since you can make these big changes at any point. And here I've arrived at the final plum. I start with very dark values when I block in the shapes, and move up the value scale to lighter values as I progress. I simplify at the start. I don't think about any reflected lights or surface texture, just light and shadow. Once those core values are harmonious, I can start adding in the reflections and the highlights. This final highlight seemed a bit darker and higher chroma compared to the others. Once I had the highlight down, I noticed the area around it needed to be lighter and higher chroma. Since all this is relative, when the area around the highlight got lighter, the highlight itself also had to get lighter. And finally, I could finish by painting in the significant amount of wax bloom that this plum had. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching.